Okay, great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak this morning. Randall sends his regrets. Randall is the Chief Engagement Officer of the Men's Shelter and Urban Ministry. Some of y'all may have heard that they merged back in May. Randall's uncle passed away and couldn't be with us today because of that. I've been volunteering at the Men's Shelter for about 6 years now, in their computer room, helping guys with resumes and job applications. About 2.5 years ago, I helped start a bootcamp workout for the shelter guests there through the F3 organization. F3 is a local group here in Charlotte that spreads to over 25 states. It stands for Fitness, Fellowship, and Faith. It's all about men getting together to encourage each other in fitness, to build bonds through fellowship, and to have an impact in their communities. That's really where the faith piece comes into that organization. So we do that all over the city, and we have one in the rescue mission, helping guys through addiction recovery, and we started one at the shelter about 2.5 years ago. That experience for me has been one of the most impactful, both in my development as a person, but also in my faith. And I'd like to share a little bit of that with y'all today. So the question I think posed to Randall from Pastor Susan is, how can we be better neighbors to those on the margins in our community, and in particular those experiencing homelessness? My personal answer to that question would be to get proximate. To get proximate to those experiencing homelessness, to see their humanity, to get proximate to see their potential, and to get proximate to share God's love. The Vine as a community focuses on connecting to the hurts of the world. And I've seen firsthand through our work at the shelter how connecting can change lives. The very first Tuesday morning or boot camp workout that we did at the shelter about 2.5 years ago had almost immediate validation of the power of connection to make a difference in the lives of the shelter guests there. I had been volunteering in the computer room for some time before that, and had seen a couple guys never really quite come into the computer room, looking sort of depressed and despondent. They joined us for that first Tuesday workout. And when I went that Friday to help out with resumes, both of those gentlemen came into the computer room. One of them had a light in his eyes and a spring in his step. And he told me, I really love that workout, and I just appreciate you guys making me feel normal again. And he shared how that week he had reached out to 4 lifelong friends he had back in New York, where he was from, to just reconnect. And I had shared that story with the director of the men's shelter, Liz Clayson Kelly. And she said, that light that you saw in his eyes when he came into the computer room, that light was hope. And she said, we often underestimate just how shameful people feel when they're experiencing homelessness, and how he had not felt worthy enough to reach out to these lifelong friends until he had done something, until he had done that workout on that Tuesday. It made him feel like he was worthy enough just to reach back out and connect with those guys. The other gentleman had come into the computer room with a spring in his step as well, and with resumes that he had worked on during the week, and a list of places he wanted to apply to for jobs. So that was instant validation for me, that just being there, just showing up, just looking at these guys peer-to-peer, man-to-man, treating them just like we'd like to be treated, it had a very powerful effect. So often with charity, with volunteer work, we think of it as like a giver-receiver, and we're the ones giving and they're the ones receiving. Something else I learned about connecting is it's a two-way street, and that we are changed, and we can become better, we can come closer to God through it. I'll give an example of a gentleman who is housed, very successful in the community, who started coming early on to that weekly shelter workout. He's in his mid-70s. He's an inspiration to all of us because he's out there doing that boot camp workout every week. He developed a relationship with one of the shelter guests, got to understand some of the challenges that man was facing. One day, that particular shelter guest was upset because he had lost his phone. He explained to this other gentleman, who I'll call Jedi. We all have nicknames in F3, his name is Jedi. So Jedi started asking about the importance of the phone. Shelter guest, we call it Kryptonite, explained that he needed the phone to get calls for day labor so that he could make money. Jedi was inspired by that and got with Randall and me to talk about how we as a workout group could better meet the needs of the guys staying there in the shelter. Through that, he came up with a fundraiser in December that we had at the Charlotte Country Club that brought about 200 guys who do F3 together and raised about $40,000 to be split among the men's shelter, the rescue mission, where F3 also has a workout, and a couple groups that work with youth soccer in disadvantaged communities. That fund has allowed the shelter to do a number of unrestricted, unplanned type things, like a Lyft Uber fund, where case managers can call Uber on a last-minute basis for a doctor's appointment or for an interview, or to get a guy a pair of work boots he needs to start on a job the next day. The employer coordinator for the shelter refers to that fund as a game changer for the shelter and for what they've been able to do. And there's some connection with TheVine to that fund because you may not know this, but TheVine has actually supported that particular fund and has been part of that game changing that the employment director refers to. The experience getting proximate to those experiencing homelessness has also greatly increased my faith. I've seen so many things happen through this workout and through ancillary service that I can't explain any other way but by higher power having his hand on the situation. I can tell you that there have been several instances where I've been in a certain place in South Charlotte where we don't live, we live here, maybe at a birthday party for one of Bo's friends, and we are walking out of the party in this complex, and he says he has to go to the potty. And there was a potty just in there, and he should have used it there, of course, but it's too late now, so there's the Harris Theater. So I'm like, okay, I'll just take him in the Harris Theater. Go to the Harris Theater potties, come back out, and there's a gentleman I met through the homeless shelter workout who just happens to be sitting there on the bench, and I would never have gone in there but for Bo having a potty, and for us being at his birthday party, which is halfway across town. And that particular man was struggling with the decision to turn from his alcoholism and go into detox. And he was wrestling with that right there on that bench, right at that time. And was able to be there in that moment and talk with him and pray with him and encourage him in that part of his journey. And I can't really explain that type of coincidence, as big as Charlotte is, any other way but for God having his hands on this workout and the work that we're doing through it. I can tell you countless other stories of that where I've been out in the community and had a number of things go wrong, incredibly frustrating mornings where it puts me in a place where I feel like I shouldn't be at that time, and I happen to see one of these guys who's struggling with something just right at that moment, and then it becomes clear to me why all that junk happened in the morning that got me into that one place where I could be there to encourage somebody. So that for me has been huge in my faith development. But those are just small things. There have been sort of major things that I've seen God do that I would not necessarily expect it would actually happen. One of the guys we worked out with, Kryptonite, who I referred to earlier, he called me on Thanksgiving Day. He'd been arrested for possession of crack cocaine, and I shared this with some of the other guys who do the workout. One of the guys is a recovering alcoholic, and he said, we need to have an intervention for kryptonite. I had never been to an intervention, had no experience with it. I did not think it would work. But we asked the shelter for a conference room one evening that next week, had about 8 or 10 guys in the workout sit down on kryptonite. Each took a turn telling him how much we cared about him and how much he meant to us. And he agreed to go to treatment. And that for me was a minor miracle. I was not necessarily expecting that. There were some bumps along the way with a failed attempt and then coming back in, but he graduated a couple weeks ago from treatment. And God is blessing him. Just a quick aside there, one of our guys had found an attorney to represent him pro bono in his sister's estate so he could recover something from her passing. This is before we knew he had a crack addiction. And he was all set to receive 12 grand. And I asked the counselors at the rescue mission when he would, at what point in his treatment could he handle that money and have it not be a trigger? And they said never. And with that amount of money, he could possibly buy an amount of crack that would stop his heart at his age. And that sort of floored me. And was advised by people to try to set up a trust for him to manage his money. And had a feeling that wouldn't go well. So when I first broached the topic, he yelled at me for about 10 minutes, coming back from lunch. And I shared with him that I'm new to this and I don't have all the answers. And I don't think he has all the answers either, but I know that he believes in someone who does, and I do too. And I asked that we would just both pray about it and then come back together. We came back together a couple weeks later, and he said, I prayed about it, and I don't want to do the trust, but I feel like it's what God wants me to do. He agreed to it. We found another attorney to draw the trust up. Jedi, I referenced earlier, is the trustee, and that's been in place for a couple weeks now. And he bought a car through it. He's paying bills responsibly, and that's just another example of something big that I thought would never happen, that he and I prayed about together, and God made a way. So the work that we're doing there, I don't look at it like an investment where you analyze return and you expect profit. I think it's service, I think it's charity, and I think you don't necessarily expect or require that of the people that you're reaching out to. There have been frustrations, there have been missteps. Kryptonite's recovery, that's really between him and God. All we can do is support. And I think a lot of people get frustrated with guys experiencing homelessness or battling addiction because of the steps forward and the steps back. A couple things sort of keep me going in that regard. One, I think we're all changed for the better when we reach out and try to help. Two is just what Jesus said when someone asked him, how many times did you forgive somebody? He said 7 times 70. It's a lot of times. And I feel like our role here through this workout with the guys at the shelter is to show God's love. Not to enable, but to be there to show love in that space between the best practices of social service and the best practices of institutions, to be there, not to enable, but just to show God's love. And it's a prayer that I pray daily, that we can have the wisdom to do that. I will tell you a quick story about a guy named Trick or Treat. He's one of our favorites in the workout. He's really impressed everyone he's met with his initiative, enthusiasm, his caring, loyalty, professionalism, resilience. He's the clearest example I've ever seen of a there but for the grace of God Goliath story. He was raised by his great-grandmother, who died in his arms when he was 13. He really had no one to turn to, and a local gang in eastern North Carolina took him in and gave him food and shelter. He became part of the gang, and he did all the things you might expect someone who's part of a gang might do. He was interviewed recently on a podcast here in Charlotte. I'll put a link on the Vine's Facebook page so that you can hear his story. in his own words. I met him early March, showing up at a Saturday to take some of the guys to one of our workouts at Revolution Park. He asked me if he could join us for the workout. I learned later through this interview that he'd been struggling with a drug addiction. He had money in his pocket to go buy drugs, but something made him not want to do that. And we brought him to the workout. We happened to be going to an organization called Men Speak After at Johnson C. Smith. And Trick or Treat happened to get paired up in an ice-breaking exercise with a guy to whom he shared some of his story. And that guy broke protocol to share his story with a larger group. And there just happened to be a CMPD officer and the Department of Social Services guy there who heard that and took an interest. And the support and the services and the doors that have opened for him since March because of that have been amazing. And that's just another example of us happening to be going to something that Saturday. Those guys happened to be there. The guy breaking protocol to share this guy's story. He's done some car detailing on the side. You might have seen me advertise him on Facebook or Nextdoor. He's made an awesome impression on everyone for whom he's detailed cars, such that people are driving him to his next appointment. They're showing up at the shelter that very next week with car detail and supplies to support him in his business. We all have the same impression of him. But after his podcast a couple weeks ago, I asked our F3 group to just forget about Trick or Treat, the man that we know, for a second, just to clear our minds and respond to the following question. And that would be, so I know a guy who's a former gangbanger, convicted felon who spent 10 years in prison, who owes child support, who struggles with addiction, and who recently got kicked out of the shelter for fighting. Can he come over to your house and wash your car? We all laughed because we would probably respond no to that question. I think all of us would. But that guy I just described and the Trick or Treat that we know, his professionalism, his integrity, his resilience, it's the same guy. And my hope is for people to know that that is possible. For people to think about gangbangers and felons and addicts and the homeless a little bit differently. And it doesn't mean we start hiring them to babysit for us, but we can start to see the humanity in them and the possibility of whom God created them to be. I was driving a few months ago to bring some housewarming gifts to one of the guys we met through the workout who had been housed recently. And I was flipping through the radio stations, and a chorus of the song caught my attention. It was Dream Small. And to me, Dream Small is the opposite of everything that I believe. So I listened to it for a little longer to see what they were talking about. And the song continued. Dream small. Don't bother like you've got to do it all. Just let Jesus use you where you are. I thought that's a wonderful prescription for service. Often we worry or get angry or waste energy on things in which we have little or no control. But God puts small opportunities in our path daily to serve our families, our neighbors, and our communities. And these opportunities may not present like hitting a grand slam in the bottom of the ninth, but our few words, our small deed, or even an acknowledgement of eye contact just might be the encouragement someone needs at that particular time in their life. So I would encourage all of us to wake up in the morning, just ask God for the opportunity to be His hands and feet, and for the wisdom and the courage to follow through. Thank you.